Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the technical session on multidisciplinary studies of the annual International Research Conference 2022. Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences of General Sir John Kotalawala Defense University. This session will be evaluated by Architect Associate Professor Dr. M.N.R. Vijaytunga, Dr. Ravihansa Chandra Tilaka, and Planner Dr. T.G.U.P. Pereira. This technical session will be chaired by Professor Chandana Jayalath, Professor in Quantitative Surveying, Faculty of Industrial Training, University of Vocational Technology. Now, I cordially invite the rapporteur of the session, Architect R.I.M. Padmacha, to introduce the session chair.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be introducing the session chair. Professor Chandana Jayalath is a professor in quantity surveying at the University of Vocational Technology. He obtained his PhD in Management, Engineering and Technology from the California Southern University with an honorary distinction. He is a member of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, United Kingdom, and holds fellowship in Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and Institute of Quantity Surveyors, Sri Lanka. He is also an accredited mediator of the Center for Effective Dispute Resolution, United Kingdom. He has published over 8 books and over 40 research papers in local and international journals and conferences. Further, he has published over 100 scientific featured articles on internet and has conducted 82 CPDs in 7 countries and professional venues in Sri Lanka. So, dear Professor, I cordially invite you to chair the session.
You can hear my voice, right? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, students. It's a pleasure to come and join the KDU Southern Campus for the first time. On my visit today, despite of my busy working schedules, I cannot simply ignore. Well, it's a great opportunity, and I thereby decided to stay tonight. So, Dr. Lakmal has been pursuing me several times, so it's a pleasure. Of course, I have been working for the KDU as an adjunct professor attached to the Faculty of Spatial Sciences, as you perhaps know. And a research conference of this type really requires more interactive type of a forum where we expect at the moment a close, support and cooperation by asking questions pertaining to various researches done over here. It will help us boost up a lot of dialogue and debate on burning issues of the country, the economies, industries, and so on. In this forum, it has been named as a multidisciplinary session, so I believe we'll maybe perhaps able to listen to very important research findings via multidisciplinary research. Few weeks ago, I had a chance to listen to one of the good research outcomes done by 2 academics in my university there in the Lakmal University of Vocational Technology. And that research was about the measurement of bell pepper plant growth using machine learning. So I think the strictest sense, it's multidisciplinary. And these two academics serve in two different departments, one in the agriculture food technology, and the other gentleman was serving at that time attached to the faculty of ICT, that is Information and Communication Technology. So it's truly a multidisciplinary research. So I think we are going to listen to that type of hybrid approaches, okay? Well, without taking any more time with the judges, I would like to call upon KWAR Lakmal and SGS Karunanayake. I think KWAR Lakmal is going to be the presenter on the topic of an investigation of the resource finding issues in highway construction projects in Sri Lanka with COVID-19 pandemic situation. Okay. Then the next in line is MGK Hasanthika, V. Disaratna and H.C. Victar. May I call upon H.C. Victar to present his research on the title, The Existing Sustainable Features in the Sri Lankan Road Construction. Well, we have a lady over here. She is Ciara Post. You are welcome to talk about your research outcomes on the topic Challenges Encountered in Teaching English in Rural Sri Lankan Secondary School, a case study of Bandaranayake Secondary School in Kiriibbanwewa, Moneragala district. We have WMKH Fernando, who is going to talk about applicability of 6R principles of the circular economy concept in Sri Lankan construction industry. So, with a group of novice researchers, of course, some are not seem to be novice. Well, let the first, yeah, okay, KWAR Lakmal. Yeah, your opportunity.
Hello, good evening everyone. My presentation topic is an investigation of the resource finding issues in highway construction projects in Sri Lanka with COVID-19 pandemic situation. So, let's talk about the introduction to the content. Firstly, introduction, then literature review, then methodology, then results, then discussion and conclusion, and finally, references. From the introduction, I am going to give an idea about the research topic background. Sri Lanka is a developing country in the South Asian region, and construction industry is one of leading entity among others. So in the Sri Lanka, construction practices are performed on buildings, roads, bridges, reservoirs, etc. And in Sri Lanka, construction projects are carried using many resources. That means labor, material, and financial resources are mainly can be identified as governing factors of any construction project. There are many challenges which confront by any construction management team, means client, consultant, and contractor throughout the construction period. Those can easily be handled or not. They may probably come as one of environmental, social, and health challenges, and it cannot be exactly forecasted. At the end of 2019, global population started to face COVID-19 pandemic, and it was the immense health challenge that affected on the construction industry recent times in Sri Lanka. So this research approach taken into the highway construction projects, considering its existing nature to investigate resource-finding issues that generated during the COVID-19 pandemic period. For that, 4 ongoing highway construction projects have been selected, covering 4 provinces in Sri Lanka. Let's move to the aim and objectives of the research. My aim is to investigate the resource-finding issues in 4 highway construction projects during COVID-19 pandemic situation in Sri Lanka, and to discuss how those affect the delay, cost, and quality of the project. In the objectives, project time, cost, and quality are the main objectives of construction project, and those are aligned to this, make these objectives in my research. First one is to study about project delay due to resource finding issues during COVID-19 pandemic. Second one is to identify the effect on the cost due to resource finding issues during COVID-19 pandemic. Third one is to identify the quality challenge to the highway construction project with resource finding issues, and to identify finally effective solution for continuing the highway construction projects during the COVID-19 pandemic period effectively. Let's move to the few literatures under construction resource background with the COVID-19 pandemic. In human resource, the literature says the construction sector was experiencing a record scarcity of trained workers in prior to the epidemic, and that problem was increased with COVID-19. Under the material resource, the ongoing coronavirus pandemic caused considerable disruption in supply chain and material shortages in the construction sector, resulting in both lengthy delays and higher cost for numerous projects. Under the financial resource, construction projects shut down during COVID-19 prevents the projects from collecting income, but the projects must still account for many of its overheads. Let's move to the methodology. In this particular research work, I selected mixed method research design and explanatory process for answering the objectives well according to the sample condition. In here, I am going to present about the research area, target population, and sampling frame. In research area, 4 provinces selected, Western, Northwestern, Central, and Eastern in Sri Lanka. Large-scale highway construction projects during COVID-19 pandemic, and 1 construction project was identified and selected from each province. In the target population, professionals of construction management teams of selected contractors in each selected highway construction projects. In the sampling frame, the registered and CS2 graded main contractor firms which possess the qualified professional teams were selected. Highway construction projects were selected considering 2 criteria due to prevailing COVID-19 pandemic situation in Sri Lanka. The 2 criteria are availability and size of the projects. Availability means ongoing highway construction projects during COVID-19 pandemic period, and size means the large-scale highway construction projects. In here, I discuss sample size and sample method. Sample size, 50 individuals were expected to cover from the following selective professional job roles. You can see in the table, project managers, planning engineers, construction manager, QA/QC engineers, quantity surveyors, and site engineers. In sample method, I use a non-probability sampling technique for selecting a sample method as purposive sampling method. Let's move to talk about data collection. In data collection, questionnaire survey and interviews were conducted for primary data collection, and primary data collection was carried 5-scale Likert scale format were dispatched in questionnaire. In questionnaire design, 17 factors have been categorized under 3 sections, and those were identified as that negatively affected factors for resource handling. And close-ended type of questions were created here. In the interviews, all interviews were carried out through telephone calls without any face-to-face interaction, and open-ended type questions focus questions used. An individual from 4 highway construction projects were represented and 30 to 40-minute discussion carried with them. In secondary data, journal articles, online paper articles, web pages, magazines were mainly followed to gather secondary data to this research. In data analysis, I used RII method in data analysis and descriptive statistics for analysis my data in this research. Under the results, the following table shows the response rate for the questionnaire and interviews. 36 responses have been received to the questionnaire and it contributes the 72% to the expected responses for the questionnaire. 50 responses were expected. Interview session carried with 4 professionals and 1 professional member from 1 project was considered from selective job roles. Before the analysis, factors were categorized and labeled and factors were given factor ID under the HR, material and financial resource categories. You can see the table that factors categorized. Now I am going to present about quantitative result. In the RII analysis, HR-related factors were ranked and you can see the left side table. There are 2 factors highly ranked, that HR1 and HR4. In the descriptive statistics, in the right side table also shows the HR4 factor has the highest mean value and comparatively HR1 also has the highest mean value. So both the analytical results show the HR1 and HR4 are most negatively affected while human resource handling during the COVID-19 pandemic period in highway construction projects. In ranking material resource related factors, in the left side table shows RII value, M4 factor is the most significant factor. And in the right side table, descriptive statistics also show the M4 factor has the highest mean value. Both results shows the M4 factor as most negatively affected while material resource handling during COVID-19 pandemic period in highway construction projects. In the financial resource related factors, the F4 factor has ranked in RII values as most significant factor in left side table and in the right side table, descriptive statistics also shows the F4 factor has the highest mean value. So both results shows the F4 factor as most negatively affected factor while financial resource handling during COVID-19 pandemic period. Let's move to the qualitative findings. In the interviewing session, professional interviewees noted that the experience of resource handling and they mentioned that the time and expenditure of the project were more difficult to manage well with unstable condition. And they mentioned the manpower and financial related issues were highly increased and affected the highway construction projects continuing during COVID-19 pandemic period. Here, there are findings regarding project delaying. Absenteeism of staff members and laborers were highly increased. Delayed frequently the local and foreign construction material to the construction site. Financial delay from the client due to inability of BOQ item completion. Under the findings regarding project cost, daily, weekly and monthly expenses of the project were gradually increased when hiring the more manpower and facilitating safety precautions them. Planning the cost of safety measures and daily expenses were more difficult. That means cost of medical and sanitary facilities raised with frequency of doing PCR test and rapid antigen test. Price of the construction materials have been varied unexpectedly several times exceeding base rate, and delaying of client payments caused the contractor as additional expenses that had to be bear at purchasing the materials until payment received. They mentioned the cost of wastage of materials and overhead cost of the project is run even that construction works halted during pandemic period. Findings regarding project quality. They mentioned less productivity of the construction works affected delay in the project completion was an overall quality challenge to the project as well as contractor side. Let's move to the discussion and conclusion. Finally, the results presented clearly that the whole factors highly affected the resource finding issues in highway construction projects in Sri Lanka with COVID-19 pandemic situation, and identified 4 factors under the human, material, and financial categories that have most negatively affected for handling the resources, which have highly affected project cost, delay, and then quality also. Identified effective solutions. HR one factor upon project's delay can be decreased in some considerable degree if the all laborers can be retained to the full by providing high level of safe working environment within the premises, ensuring their sanitary facilities intensively. For that, isolated accommodation facilities with entertaining background to gain their mind happy from stress of COVID-19, and essential goods and meals need to be supplied them. The effect of HR4 has raised when the labor shortages happen. So that can also be minimized on project cost if the HR1 is controlled. The effect of M4 factor upon highway construction projects delay can be decreased in some degree by proceeding the estimation and ordering of required material as soon as possible without waiting up to the next particular level which those materials needed. For that, widening of the
1 minute, please.
Safe storing facilities and minimum wastage to be highly considered. The effect of F4 factor upon project cost can be minimized considerably if ensured HR1 factor also. There are few future directions in this research, and this research can be extended further by enhancing the sample considering more road construction projects available, and the inquiry can be carried forward to reviewing the previous and existing resource finding background in highway construction projects after terminating the COVID-19 virus outbreak in Sri Lanka. The study can be carried forward to investigate the effect on client side due to resource finding issues on contractor side in road construction industry in Sri Lanka during COVID-19 pandemic. An investigation of the resource finding issues during COVID-19 pandemic can also be carried on building construction industry and other industries also in Sri Lanka. These are the few references that I made for this presentation. And thank you in advance all, and KDU IRC 2024 giving this valuable opportunity for presenting here today. Thank you all again.
Thank you, Lakmal. Well, we all know that UN, United Nations, declared COVID-19 as a pandemic on the 13th of March 2020. Now almost 2.5 years gone, and the consequences that we had to face, not only as a construction industry but in general societal and economic activities, was so enormous, and it became all chaotic, and we had to lock down, and you know, some thousands and thousands of people died. And then the domino research related to COVID-19 started with the start of experiencing the COVID-19 consequences. And now the topic is becoming obsolete. And now people are talking about the next normal, actually. It's called next normal. That is once the pandemic period has been not necessarily over, but settled down to some extent, where we have to think of new dimensions and new world order as to how we operate our, you know, day-to-day activities as human societies. So that is called next normal. Still, we should not forget the fact that there could be, in future we don't know. Therefore, the findings of this type of research would be still valid. And you have talked about the delay, the cost aspect, and the quality as well. 3 dimensions basically, and come up with some solutions. So when you are finding out both the primary and secondary data, right? Okay. At the end of the day, what is the very message that is still available with you to convey to the society? I mean, the people who are involved in the construction industry, okay? What is the ultimate message? Did you come across anything new on your thing? Because there are a lot of research done by previously, right? Different people, different parts of the world. Now, I am posing you 2 questions. any new findings, and what is the key message that you can convey to the society?
In Sri Lanka, sir, this type of research have not been done yet, I search. And I hope to give some idea about what is the situation.
Okay, we'll take it up at the Q&A session, right? Okay, keep in mind. Thank you very much, and we'll go to the next presenter, HC Victar, to talk about the existing sustainable features in the construction, road construction.
Good afternoon, all of you. My research topic is the existing sustainable features in Sri Lankan road construction. This is my presentation overview. Let's talk about my background. We all are facing economic crisis in Sri Lanka up to now. So the construction is the major parameter we can evaluate when calculating about our economic growth. So when the construction development is up, it directly affects our economic growth. That is the positive side of our economic. And it's the construction sector who is directly involved to our economic growth. That's the positive side. But when we think about our negative sides, so we know when the construction is going on, definitely there have pollutions. Not only the pollutions, the environment may be directly affect to human lives, not only human, living all beings. So I'm going to talk about what are the existing sustainable features we have used in our road construction. So we know especially in road construction, they have used primary resources and the materials, especially now the material scarcity is very high. We have to use alternatives because the materials are limited, but our human needs are unlimited. We have to think what we have to done to avoid usage of our resources. So when considering about the road construction, we know in the earth moving, embankment developments, and the road crushings, and the usage of the diesel power plants, they already emit bad gases and the polluted air and the environment. So we have to think what are the solutions. So when we talk about what are the alternatives, the sustainability is the one of the major parameter we have to think. So not only sustainability, in sustainability there is a circular economy. So we have to think how to circulate, how to use sustainability approaches to Sri Lankan road construction. There is an error. So when we think about in my background, so to avoid those kind of emissions and the pollutions, we can take sustainability in our road construction. So according to this background, I was identifying literature gap and the industrial need. So they have different gaps and we have identified it and taken investigation for it. First, literature gap in fast researchers, they have identified the road projects according to their case studies, very much consider about the global context, not much touch in Sri Lankan context. So, and industry need, when we think about industry need, so there is not a specific regulating system to analyze the sustainability when going on, when the implementations of the road construction. So we have to think about the future generation. So according to considering both industrial need and the literature gap, this is my problem statement. What are the existing sustainable features in Sri Lankan road construction are used? To achieve above my problem statement, this is my aim and objective. Aim to investigate the existing sustainable features in Sri Lankan road construction To achieve above mentioned aim, I was identify and investigate 3 main objectives. First one, review the sustainable features normally used in the world, that means global context, and review the advantages and disadvantages. Because when we present our findings, definitely we have to say there is an advantage for our construction industry. Not saying anything, they have not always trying to reject it. So we have to say what are the advantages, disadvantages, not only it, challenges and opportunities with reference to Sri Lanka, and investigate the existing sustainable features in Sri Lankan road construction. So this is my research methodology, background, problem statement, literature review, and quantitative analysis, quantitative research approach may be used, and questionnaire surveys used as a data collection, and relative important index are used as a data analysis. Finally, conclusion and recommendation. This is my non-random convenience sampling. So this is the variable I was considered about the age, year of experience, academic qualification when I was selecting my respondents. So according to that, let's move my research finding and analysis. So according to objective 1, analysis of sustainable features normally used in Sri Lankan road construction. So previous I was mentioned, the relative important indices was used, then after evaluate and rank how they are important ours. So these are the basic sustainable features we have used. First one, in Sri Lankan, various types of concrete and demolition material. We know the times to circularities come to this way. So circular economy is the basic principles we can adapt when the sustainability can be success. So we know the circular say always don't dispose any material with going to used at atmosphere. So why in our construction what to do? When we use demolish someone, it used as a landfill or embankment field. But it's not the option to in our Sri Lanka. So next one, Sri Lankan construction industry has developed new biological materials. Most of time in Europeans, they have very famous use of biomaterials. These are the basic sustainable features, and according to objective 2, these are the basic advantages. So in reuse of these materials help to waste prevention. In previous session, I can heard the material bank and the most probably they have say material bank. Not only material bank, they have a new concept, material passport. So material bank and material passport we can improve in our Sri Lanka. Not only today, sometime most probably in future we can use. When we use material bank or material passport, definitely we can get some distance to our sustainability. So when we use something in our construction industry located in Sri Lanka, definitely we can use for the another location at the end of this project. So we can easily grab or easily identify by using material passport. This is an electronic system to identify easily. These are the challenges we have to face during our sustainability is achieved. So lack of the understanding of the sustainable features. Most probably in our construction sector experts, they have a very good knowledge, very much experts regarding our sustainability. But problem, they have not involved to use it. There's a problem. So this may be the challenges for us to in modern construction. Not going to very much. And this is my objective 3. Analysis of the applicability of the existing sustainable features to Sri Lankan road construction. Previous I was mentioned, new biological materials and methods to improve strength of soil, material passport, material bank. In Europeans, they have very much reach for these concepts and can achieve this. My conclusion at the initial stage, I was mentioned, we have to survive from economic crisis, and also we have to think about our future. So we have to think about our construction industry. So I was identify what are the advantages and also discuss about the disadvantages and opportunities and challenges in my investigation. So, and let's move on to my recommendations and the future directions. In my research investigation, it may be useful to develop a program to mention in about how sustainability features can involve to road construction. Not only that, can use as a guideline to Sri Lankan construction users, and further directions when consider about they can direct new frameworks to avoid or overcome challenges in sustainable road construction, and can use new technologies. How the beam is now very famous in our construction now, how beam is used for to achieve and how to reduce the waste generation. And these kind of unavailable knowledge regarding the construction process. So we can use these new technologies in our construction, especially in road construction, and we can use new procurement strategies. These are my references. I acknowledge my supervisors, Chartered QS Senior, Victar Disaratna. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the next presenter, Ms. Ciara Post, is going to talk about the challenges encountered in teaching English in rural Sri Lankan secondary school. I think she has done a case study in the Moneragala district. Let's see the outcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ciara, and I'm going to be presenting the research that Danushka Wickramasinghe and I conducted on the challenges encountered in teaching English in rural Sri Lankan secondary schools, specifically taking Bandaranayake Secondary School in Kiriibbanwewa, Moneragala district as a case study. So here is the plan. I'm going to go through introduction, research gap, research question, objectives, methodology, data and findings, conclusion, resulting recommendations, references, and acknowledgements. Okay, so to begin, there we go. To begin, I think it's important to acknowledge that English language fluency is really necessary for economic, social, and political mobility, not only in Sri Lanka, but globally. So just as an example, take the fact that we're conducting this conference in English. Despite that fact, most students in Sri Lanka achieve only a CEFR level 1 by grade 11. So to give you a little bit of context for what this means, essentially language fluency can be measured from A1 to C3. So it goes A1, A2, A3, and then B1, B2, B3, C1, C2, C3. So students at grade 11 in Sri Lanka on average are only achieving an A1, essentially most basic possible. Within this context, speaking and listening skills are particularly weak. And in rural contexts, there are even more challenges. So if you look at the average language level of a teacher in a rural school, you find that they achieve below a B2 on average, which is lower than in urban schools. And on top of that, rural teachers have less access to teacher trainings. So these realities really demonstrate that there are significant challenges in ELT in rural Sri Lanka, but that means that there are also significant opportunities. So in terms of research gap, so a lot of the research takes really a macro level, survey level approach on the challenges in rural Sri Lanka. And we thought that it would be interesting to really focus very specifically on the nuances and complexities of one school in particular and on their particular methods and outcomes. So we chose this school in Moneragala district. I will explain further. And we chose to take thematic pedagogical lenses of fluency, accuracy, traditional methods, and non-traditional methods, all of which I will describe further. So Bandaranayake Secondary School is located in Kiriibbanwewa, Moneragala district. It's just about 5 kilometers from the campus that we're on right now. The students there are grades 6 to 12. There are 487 students, and average class size is about 20 to 30. Our research question, in order to ask all of these questions, we asked To what extent do English language teaching methods at Bandaranayake result in successful learning outcomes for students' English reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills? Our objectives are threefold. So the first is to observe and deeply analyze and understand how, in particular, English is taught in one rural school in Moneragala district, especially with respect to accuracy, fluency, traditional, and non-traditional approaches. So you can think of accuracy approaches as sort of trying to speak perfectly, with no mistakes, very grammar focused, versus fluency is really just trying to get your ideas out, trying to be able to express yourself, and also allowing mistakes. Traditional approaches in teaching tend to be a lot more textbook focused, a lot more grammar focused, and a little bit more rote memorization, versus non-traditional approaches really push the boundaries of what language learning can be, using singing, games, art, experiential learning. So that's the first objective. The second objective is to assess the students' skills and to assess the outcomes in these four main skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And then the third objective is, based on these findings, to then provide recommendations for improving English language teaching methods and outcomes in rural Sri Lanka. So we used ethnographic research methods, specifically qualitative observational data, which we collected over the course of 4 months from April to August of this year. We also used semi-structured interviews with the teachers at the school, and then coded and categorized their responses using thematic analysis. These are our interview questions. I won't read them specifically, but the first really focuses on methods. How do you teach English? The second is, how strong are the students in each of the skills? What are their strengths? The third is, which skill do you think is the most important? And the fourth, how could teaching at Bandaranayake be improved? A little bit on the background of the teachers. They have been working at the school for 20 years, 5 years, and 5 years respectively. So here in this table, you can see the coded semi-structured interview responses. So what you see is what seems to be a balanced curriculum, employing both traditional and non-traditional approaches. So you see singing songs, balanced by matching varieties, and you also see like field trips, balanced by concept checking questions. So that's something that we then wanted to perceive as well with our observational data. Something else that we noticed just through the interviews was that there was a pretty significant disagreement amongst the teachers on the assessment of students' strengths and the most important skills. So one teacher, the teacher who's been there for over 20 years, she said that the students' greatest strengths are speaking and listening, and the most important skills are reading and writing, versus another teacher said the exact opposite. Speaking and listening are weak, and reading and writing and speaking and listening are the most important as well. So there's this discrepancy where the two teachers are saying opposite things, actually. So then we delved into this problem deeper with our observational data, and we found a weighting towards traditional accuracy-based reading and writing skills, which I will discuss further in the further slides. Okay, so essentially I will explain some of this data to you, and then afterwards I will analyze it after I give you these key observational data points. So this is a day I was working with grade 12. I asked them, how old are you? All of them said 16, which to me was very confusing because I was working with grade 12. And so I wrote the number on the board, and what we found is that they were actually 18. So they weren't able to correctly tell me their age. Another day, I was working with grade 9. Their teacher asked me if I would work on grammar points, and I suggested that we work on speaking and listening because it's unusual to have a native speaker in the classroom. So the first question that I asked them was, what did you do today? And the students actually didn't understand what I was asking them. The teacher then spoke up and she said, they aren't very good at speaking or listening, but they understand the textbook well. Another day, and this is sort of general feedback that I get, is that the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students would prefer not to work with me because I do focus on speaking and listening in general, and they wanted to focus on their textbooks so that they could prepare for their O and A-level exams, essentially focusing on reading and writing. Another day, I asked students, what did you do in class yesterday? And they responded, uncountable nouns. Another day, I was in class, and I was asked to do a listening exercise. This listening exercise was in a textbook, and I read the passage three times. It was a discussion of two British men's experience visiting Sri Lanka, and then based on my reading, the students were then asked to fill in blanks in the text in their own workbooks. So what does all of this mean? What you find throughout all of this data is a really significant focus on the textbook. Again and again, I'm being asked to work in the textbook, the teachers are working from the textbook, and it's very grammar focused. So although one teacher says that the students are strongest in speaking and listening, I found something very different. I found that they were strongest in reading and writing because that's a lot of what the curriculum does, and it does that through the textbook. And so this you can recognize as a traditional approach that is really accuracy-based, so it's very grammar-based and rote memorization-based. And in a similar way, you also see, right, I was asking the students these questions. They couldn't answer my questions when I said them to them, but then when they see them written, they can understand those questions. Similarly, when I was reading the passage out loud, and they weren't asked to respond to me in kind to speak back to me. They were asked to write. So instead of listening and then speaking in response, it was really listening and writing. On top of that, another observation that I have is that a lot of the textbook, really, the experiences are not located in the lives of the students. So the motivation to learn English, for example, right, you have, I'm just gonna go back to, where is it? This one. So it's really focused on the experience of these two British men, right? It's not the experience of the students. How are they gonna use English? How is English important for their lives? That's not the focus. The focus is really located in a Eurocentric view of what English can be versus a Sri Lankan view of what English can be and why English is necessary. So in all of these ways, you really see priority placed on accuracy over fluency and reading and writing over speaking and listening. And with the students' answers to my questions like, what did you do today and how old are you? We can say that their level is an A1. So it's as if they haven't been in English for most of their academic career, as if they're starting from zero. And this is especially concerning because one of the teachers says that the students' greatest strength is speaking and listening. So that means that there's a really significant mismatch between the assessment being done by the teachers and the actual realities of the students. So this is something that also needs to be improved, is matching up what actual student performance is with teacher assessment. So from all of these findings, we can say that English language teaching at Bandaranayake needs to change if it's going to effectively improve students' English proficiency. So we recommend in our research that the school really foregrounds non-traditional fluency-based English language teaching trainings for Bandaranayake Secondary School. There's a lot of research out there and literature that says that non-traditional fluency-based approaches do a much better job of improving students' ability to speak in a foreign language. In addition to that, we think that this should be done through local tertiary institutions' English language teaching departments. We think that this kind of a collaboration of support from a local tertiary institution for local secondary and perhaps primary schools could then serve as a model for the improvement of ELT methods and outcomes in rural Sri Lanka, especially where tertiary institutions are located. And I would like to say that this isn't outside of the scope of what tertiary institutions in Sri Lanka already do. So if you look at the Ministry of Education in Sri Lanka and you look at who's on the board, what you find is that you have vice chancellors, former vice chancellors, heads of department, lecturers, people who are very intimately involved with tertiary institutions are the ones who are coming up with the curriculum and training programs for teachers and students in secondary and primary schools. So what this means is that the work that they're doing already could be more directly linked to the students who are actually being affected. So here are the references for all of this work. I am happy to discuss further if you have any questions. And I just want to say thank you so much to the principal, teacher, and students from Bandaranayake Secondary School who provided their perspectives and time in order to make this research possible. And I would also like to thank KDU Southern Campus and the U.S. Sri Lanka Fulbright Commission for sponsoring this research. Thank you.
Thank you, Ciara. Well, listen to the last presenter, WMKH Fernando. It's your time.
Good evening, everyone. Our research topic is implementing 6R principles of the circular economy concept in Sri Lankan construction industry. Here is the content of this presentation. Introduction. First of all, a construction can be identified as a process of applying and management of capital, assets, specialized employees, materials, and machineries to get a required output. So this circular economic concept gives the idea of using renewable energy, and it prevents the use of hazardous chemicals. The primary purpose of this circular economy concept is to create an economic structure to regenerate materials, goods, and components. In this circular economic concept initially was founded on 3R principles, which are reduce, reuse, and recycle. After that, it was developed into 6R principles by adding redesign, reclassification, and renewability principles. Problem statement of this study. Currently in Sri Lanka is facing environmental problems and also social problems due to unsustainable construction methods. This problem can be justified as with increased construction activities, it is better to expect higher amount of resource consumption and waste disposal systems in the future. General objective of this study is to increase the implementation level of circular economy concept and its principles for construction projects in Sri Lanka. The specific objectives are to assess the awareness of circular economy concept and its advantages, and to provide a criteria to implement 6R principles of circular economy concept for construction projects. Literature review. Circular economy concept. This is a restorative or regenerative industrial system. And end of life is restoration. It moves to the renewable energy and it prevents the hazardous chemicals. This circular economy concept increases the life cycle of buildings by applying R principles, and it gives a better value for the construction projects. R principles in circular economy concept. As I mentioned earlier, this concept was initially founded on 3R principles, reduce, reuse, and recycle. After that, it became advanced into 6R principles by adding redesign, reclassification, and renewability. Circular economic concept in the construction industry. As per the literature, half of all waste created in the construction sector is linked with end-of-life activities and operations and demolition works. But unfortunately, only around 30% of these components are reused or recycled. So that this circular economic concept will help the industry to be more sustainable. and it reduced the environmental effect of building operations. Research gap of this study, there's a recent study on implementing circular economy concept for the pre-construction stage. This study focuses on implementing circular economy concept and its principles for the whole project life cycle. Methodology. A qualitative data collection approach was followed, and that was semi-structured interviews. Purposive sampling technique was used, and that sample includes project managers, engineers, quantity service, and architects. Content analysis content data analysis method and descriptive data presentation methods are used in this study. Research findings. Awareness of circular economy concept in the Sri Lankan context and its advantages. As per the interviewees' opinions, the life cycle cost of a construction project can be reduced. In Sri Lanka, unfortunately, the construction professionals are also still trying to complete the construction projects according to the only considering mostly project management parameters such as time, cost, and quality. But the circular economy concept can be used to the project portfolio level and project success management level. 6 are principles in the circular economy concept within the Sri Lankan construction industry. According to the interviewees' viewpoints, we are applying only 3R principles for projects, so that we are more unfamiliar with 6R principles. So here's a criteria to implement 6R principles for Sri Lanka construction projects. Under the reduction principle, it's better to reduce material wastage. As an example, when fabricating PVC pipes and HDPE pipes, we can use skilled labor forces. And we should pay more attention to reduce using of materials which are cannot recyclable or reusable. And it's better to use more recyclable materials such as glass. And we can use new technologies for concrete mixing and wall plastering to reduce wastage. Under the reuse principle, we can select more reusable materials than recyclable materials because there's a cost for recycling process. And using of demolished concrete parts for filling works in road construction projects. And it's better to double checking of materials before ordering materials. And we should maintaining detailed specification of materials. Under the recycle principle, it's better to select recyclable materials according to the lifespan of building. And glass can be rebuilt as glass concrete. And also recycle paper waste in construction project offices. Under the redesign principles, it's better to provide some provisions to change the design of the structure after a few decades, another requirement. And also modular construction methods with steel or metal. Under the reclassification principle, this was a very unfamiliar principle among Sri Lankan industry specialists at the interviews, but they highlighted that it's better to select more durable materials, and it's better to select eco-friendly construction materials. Under the renewability principle, solar power is the main renewable energy in Sri Lanka, and also wind power. And we can purify rainwater, that's called rainwater harvesting. And we can use kinetic energy, which is provided by waterfalls. It has the ability to generate electricity. Recommendation, it's better to, government should take necessary steps to promote solar power systems, not only for commercial buildings, but also for domestic purposes also. And there should be a proper storage location for waste material and selection of eco-friendly materials. And we can use new technologies which generate minimum wastage and modular construction methods. And also conduct awareness programs about this concept and the 6R principles. And it's better to construction industry professionals should take necessary actions to promote this concept and 6R principles. As a conclusion of this study, the 6R principles of circular economy concept are reduce, reuse, recycle, redesign, reclassification, and renewability. The purpose of this circular economy concept is to reduce material wastage and save the resources in the country for the future usage. In Sri Lanka, only 3R principles are using, but they are also using for few mega scale sustainable construction projects. Advantages of this concept are lifespan of a building will be expanding and essential materials and natural resources in the country will be saved. And it's better to use this concept for the project portfolio level and project success management, not only for project management parameters. At the interviews were highlighted about proper storage location for waste material, selection of eco-friendly materials, and new technologies, and applying modular construction methods. Limitations: because of the low response rate of industry professionals, it was reduced, the sample was reduced into 12. And a further research direction can be built as quantity survey's role in implementing 6R principles of the circular economy concept for Sri Lankan construction projects. These are the references I have used for my study. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we can move on to the Q&A session. Okay. So the first presenter, KWAR Lakmal. He presented a couple of good research outcomes, of course, related to the resource handling issues, but during the COVID-19 period. Okay. So, as I said, any specific finding you came across out of your?
So, this is like
Okay, come closer.
so this study like a professional discussion carried with project managers, planning engineers, quantity surveyors, site engineers, and their experience with this critical situation in Sri Lanka, how they behave with the challenge nature to the Sri Lanka that is never expected from Sri Lankans in past years. So I tried to discuss with them and what are they expected to do overcome this critical situation, and what are their ideas and their behavior with this challenge.
Yeah, as far as I know, the Victar, now CEDA came up with a protocol to deal with the health issues related to, and that has a connection with the quality matters also. And there was one research how best this protocol could be implemented. I mean, at site level. So what kind of a patronage given to the protocol during the implementation of construction projects. So there was a research. And unfortunately, the result was that majority of the sites at that time, the sample size was quite big sample size, like 150 projects at different scales, located in Colombo suburbs, actually, Colombo suburbs. The protocol has been grossly ignored. I don't know why, but that was one of the findings of that research, actually. So that itself is a big quality issue, actually. So likewise, we know that the project got protected unduly, to by 2 times or 3 times sometimes. Then that was the plan planned period. So people is starting finding new ways of curbing this time and cost overrun actually. And most of the researchers in the local context were sidelined onto the claims and contractual issues, how to address contractual issues. But this is the first time I got to know this quality matter as to how the quality issues were controlled at that time. So I think we have our project managers or veteran industry personnel having the links with the industry, construction industry. I think Professor Manu Adu and Professor Lalitha Silla can add to this discussion your experience as to how our construction practitioners dealt with this issue of cost, time and quality constraints during the pandemic.
I have a small concern on your research. So in terms of sustainability, we usually categorize that into social, economical and environmental sustainability, right? So I saw that you already addressed about the dust management and dust control things in your research. So what about noise control, and because it affects the social and environmental aspects, right? So any concern on the noise control, especially in highway projects?
Yeah.
Sorry, for the next one.
Okay, let's see. Any questions from the audience, please? Yes.
Now, we have experienced this about 2.5 years, COVID epidemic, and afterward the economic clash, and then the cost escalation severely at projects. When we had the feeling of cost going up, as consultants, what we recommended to the developer or the client was to advance, generally the advance is paid only 20%, 30% to the contractor. So what we advise the client to pay more advance to the contractor based on bank guarantees and assurances, and give the money to the contractor to purchase material before it goes up, and there's a scarcity was created, possible scarcity that could be created in the market. So that is how we control to some extent, right? Then you can control the quality also. When the material is scarcity, the quality also will go down because you can't find the material that you want. So that is how we did, but that also was limited with the exchange rate, because you can't stock the entire stock for the project, but but at least 60%, 70% you could stock, especially steel, right? Those about 5 times increase, and cement about 3 times increase. So cement you can't stock for more than 1 or 2 months. It has to be, go to the concrete mixing plant and come as concrete, so like that. So then what we did was we bought cement and gave to the concrete plant, and they use our cement for other people, and when you want the concrete, they give their cement and give, but at the old price. So those are like management tactics that we use for control the cost.
Yeah.
So that is my response. And I have a suggestion now. This kind of controls are very good because there are several universities are connected. So now I think there were 3% or 2% on the road projects, and 6 are principal from KDU. So if the 3 universities get together and have like a research group whose interests are similar, then we can have a collaborative research projects. And just imagine if the 3 researchers get together and produce a policy document that can be given to the government. Okay, when you want to fill landfill for roads, right? The Karunanayake highway, they have to fill, the roadway was filled by sea sand, by extracting sea sand from the sea. So suppose if you could build with debris, and that would have been preserved. So like that, a policy paper for government. I think that should be the final objective of this kind of research output. It should go for implementation. This is what has happened whatever we do research, it ends at the end of the conference. And if we can say build up a team of similar interest, it need not to be done by the institute. Maybe faculties can get together and do it. This is my suggestion. More to a KDU, Peradeniya, right? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's a very effective thing, if possible, join together and do joint research actually, because all these 3 papers going to be crossed over, and I think as a government, the patronage that a government can do at a pandemic like that would be to come up with an umbrella kind of approach and see how best the government can support the construction people, actually the contractors, in procuring long lead items and try to ease out the financial constraint that may have encountered when we are, dealing with the exchange rate, because the gap is going to go widen day by day, so that the government can intervene in such matters and try to help through various legal instruments and financial instruments actually. Because, for example, a contract is going to procure a long lead item, some big heavy cost electromechanical stuff from Denmark, for example, right? So the whole supply chain has a financial commitment where the government can give assurance to those manufacturers rather than asking the individual contractors share the whole burden, right? So some kind of a insurance scheme, on the other hand, that's also possible. That is from the government side. Because the Chinese government, I know that they started issuing a thing called some kind of a certificate for their contractors operating worldwide, completely immunizing the entire financial burden, because the government takes the responsibility. I know that we cannot simply do exactly the same way the government in China do their own people. But we would have gone to such mechanism at least at a lower scale, just to give a support to the registered people in the country actually, as contractors. So that it will really help bridge the financial gap between cash in and cash out during the most needed time. So that is one of the suggestions actually. Suggestions made by the construction chamber also is where the material exchange from supply to another, right? So it's a temporary solution, which is also viable actually. So there were a couple of measures, but the majority suffered a lot, I know. And I think around 85% of those registered contractors suffered a lot, and they were crying, and all. Most of the contractors who have been registered in the ICTAD list remain the same. So whereas the new entrants come into the industry not reflected in the list. I think there are new registrants, around 100 new registrants in the list, but again in the same amount you are winding up your business of contracting. So so the market has now become sluggish. There are no new jobs at all. So still the situation is exorbitant. So I think the authorities, the policy people, policy making people must be very, very sensitive to this issue. Otherwise, as an industry, we are not that moving better, I believe. So I think that is the fact. So let's move on to the second presenter.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, I have one question.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yes, you mentioned about the highway construction industry, and according to my knowledge, surveys play a very important role in road construction process, and especially for highway projects. So, but in your target group, I didn't see the service role included. It was excluded. So, what is the reason for that? I mean, is there a specific reason, and how did you choose that target group?
I think mainly project managers, planning engineers, quantity surveyors, they are performing their jobs in resource management, and they are the directly in all party under the resource management, but the surveyors, they are directly in technical things, and so I think they are the possible for this study for collecting data. So,
okay, this is a purposive sampling technique, right? So almost everyone has a stake in managing resources. When we say resources in construction, basically the key inputs such as material, labor, plant, equipment, tools, even expertise, the architects provide design and so on. All are resources. Some are tangible, some are not tangible. What about the capital? What about entrepreneurship, the managerial inputs? All are resources actually. So when we are doing a research of this type, we have to clearly demarcate the nomenclature adopted throughout. They are called operational definitions. So we have to give operational definitions set out at the outset before we embark onto doing data collection. So we have to carefully manage it. It's a part of the managing, it's a part of the research design actually. So better we, it's, you have to be careful in identifying the resource personnel, right? There's no harm of going by purposive. You purposely pick up the people based on their experience or the knowledge or the
recording
expertise,
in progress.
Okay, that's the reason, right? Okay. So any other questions, please? Shall we move on to the second presenter, right? Mr. H.C. Victar, your topic is the existing sustainable features in Sri Lankan road construction. Okay, right. Well, you have been presenting a lot of factors. You have come across a host of factors influencing the sustainability in road projects. And you were talking about material bank or material passport. Yeah. Okay. As a mechanism, how can we, get the maximum benefit out of this bank?
For example, when we start a project in this location, so after the demolish this building, after the end of this building, we can use these materials can use for another purpose. So when get example, this is located in Hambantota. One person who is in Jaffna, who came to know about this project, so we have to get interconnected with those knowledge and those regarding those material. So there is a specific mechanism, this called material passport. So when there is a availability of material, any kind of, there is the demolition material or remaining material, definitely the persons who are in another locations, he can get directly answer from it. And if he has any requirements regarding these materials or any kind of labor, it can be not only material, labor, any kind, that he can easily connect with it and get remedies easily.
Well, my memory is going far back in 2005, if I'm not mistaken, the CEDA Act, one of the provisions in the Act is to establish a national-wide database. That is one of the functions of CEDA. I don't know, I have never seen this, that database. But if you can have a database, as you said, anybody can, check for various things like quantities, the prices, availability, and different sizes, gauges, and so on. Yes. So it is going to be workable, right? Okay. Then I could not hear there's a concept called BAR, that is building adaptive reuse, I think. I'm afraid of talking all these things because related to architecture, we have two veteran personalities in the field of architecture education. So while they are on board, actually, you can get the maximum out of their knowledge. What about building adaptive reuse concept?
Yeah,
because that's also sustainability thing, no?
Yeah, yes, it is the part of sustainability. We know the circular economy is also the part of sustainability. When they consider about circular economy, the previous presenter who has presented the circular economy, there is a basic principle, reuse or recycling. Definitely, it's a part of our sustainability. I was mentioned in my presentation, circularity can be used to minimize our waste and the transportation cost, everything we can use because now a trend in is circular economy. So we have to, all things are interconnected, not about the materials, human, labor, all things are interconnected and they have circulated.
I think the domain of sustainability, topic of sustainability came into discussion among the academics back in 1970s, or at least the beginning of 1980s. But as a nation, we have been dealing with this sustainability unknowingly because it is our indigenous practices. Now, what about second-hand market, for example? Very simple. Now there are second-hand markets for building materials which are relatively cheaper, and ideally at this economic context, actually, people are moving more oriented towards, they are going behind the second-hand sellers for budgetary, for budget purchases. So that's also part of sustainability.
For example, in tsunami season, the damages house elements are also transported to different areas. Also, it was used.
So I think in economics we learn a thing called linkages, no, forward and backward linkages. So that's what, as Professor Jayasuriya suggested, better you all together think about this. And two of you were doing a circular economy, right? And how best you can adopt the concept of circular economy for the betterment of the construction industry. There's a huge scope, actually, scope for research, scope for development, scope for patenting, and so on. So I think if you can come up with something commercially exploitable in one fine day, you can be an entrepreneur on the other hand. So think about those lines, right? Yeah, please.
Sorry, my previous question was
yeah,
for
I have
you.
remember, madam. Yes, I already included in my findings because when we use alternative materials, when we used to crush, using about the crushing materials, we can use alternative materials to avoid the soil noises. So yeah, other than that, I am not going to say the 100% we can't avoid. So there is another option, use the precast element. So when we construct the items in another location, so it can be easily avoid the noise pollution, but rather than going on the constructing. So it's another alternative that we have to use to reduce the noise pollution.
During your research, did you find any regulations kind of things related to noise?
Actually, there is not standard regulations, ma'am, but in global wise, they have already input.
Well, another side of the story when you come to sustainability is the value engineering. Now, since we have quantity surveyors and architects and some engineers must also be here. So this is a collective effort, multidisciplinary effort, value engineering. Because now we know eco bricks, for example, to achieve the same compressive strength, same characteristic strength, you can avoid to a great extent the use of cement. Instead, you can use what you call just soil and a little cement content and compressed it. And the outcome is the same, 7 Newton per square millimeter, whatever the strength of the eco brick. So that's a kind of a value engineering exercise. So in construction, there are a lot of composite embankments have been built using this concept actually. So they try to avoid use of asphalt as much as possible, and this is seen in even in the Middle Eastern countries. They build up with a heavy mass soil embankment actually. They now going to avoid use of cement and concrete as much as possible. So, so they promote value engineering, and in order to promote, what they do is they give incentives, and they have come up with a mechanism called cost sharing, a benefit sharing mechanism. It's a part of the contractual arrangement in the Middle Eastern countries. In their contractual modality itself, they promote this value engineering concept through concessions actually. So if you come up with something new, then that will be really a positive, I mean, it's a concession, it's a really a discount to the contractor, and that kind of approach we can think of, right? In Sri Lanka, unfortunately, we don't have that kind of promotional, because we are always looking at the contractor, enemy or a theft or some guy that is coming to eat the client's money. I don't know, that has been the attitude. It's a matter of attitude actually. Now it is time we change this. All are in equal footing. Each one has an equal role to play, and all are contributing to the project success. The contractor, consultant, and the client. So we need to have this attitudinal change among the industry practitioners. So with that, we'll move on to, am I rightly pronouncing your name, Ciara?
Ciara.
Ciara, okay. Ciara, now your one is on the education side.
Excuse me. Sir.
Another question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please go ahead.
I'm Jayasuriya. Thank you for your interesting presentation. I have heard about the lead Green QS, Green SL type of sustainable assessment system for the building sector. Can you explain having any sustainable assessment system for the road construction?
Actually, we have a standard assessment. So, in my finding, I think it may be used to develop an assessment for the Sri Lankan road construction. It's not standard, so I think it can be used as evaluation criteria to evaluate our road construction process. It's maybe up to. So, when we get example, when sustainability in Middle East, they have a line projects. So, in Sri Lanka, they have not developed much to up. So, in these European countries, they also consider about the all social, economical, environment, all sustainability. But in Sri Lanka, it's a developing country now, so it's not much about in Sri Lanka.
Thank you.
Okay. May I move to Ciara? Ciara, you were doing the educational side of the research on that side. I could not understand, first of all, the term non-traditional based ELT training.
Yeah, I can.
What does it take?
I can explain. So, is the term non-traditional approach makes most sense when put in context with traditional. So you can think of non-traditional as really pushing the bounds of traditional teaching. So going beyond the textbook, going beyond, right now there's a curriculum that's very, very textbook based. So leaving the textbook a little bit and doing more experiential learning. And there are some other pedagogical approaches that are suggested in the paper itself. But like putting students in circles and having them speak with each other, not correcting mistakes, really emphasizing conversation, having them go out of the classroom, those sort of things are
recording in
non-traditional.
progress.
So then taking those into ELT, stands for English language teaching. So it would be trainings for the secondary school on those non-traditional approaches.
Well, what made I ask this question is during
Yes.
our time in 1970s, teachers had the teacher's guide, but now it is called the learner's guide.
Mm.
It's focused on the learner. So teacher should pretend himself as a student and deliver, right? Pedagogically adjustment. So in Moneragala actually, so what was your experience at the end of the day?
For me as a learner,
Yes.
I think I have learned a lot about level, and like, I think that for me, I went into the classroom and I wanted to have all of these like higher level conversations. And what I realized is that actually even having the students, like asking, there was a time when I asked the students if they would draw how they were feeling. And I'm explaining everything in English, so it's immersive. So I gave an example of, for example, today I'm feeling a little bit stressed, so I drew a picture. What I found was that then all of the students drew the exact same picture that I had drawn. So what I have found is that in accessing these non-traditional approaches, it's also about, there's like a conditioning of the learners themselves inside of these traditional approaches. And so then it's figuring out as a teacher, how do you break down reluctance and help the students to understand that their individual perspective and feeling has value. So how can I be better at doing that, right? I learned I shouldn't be drawing my perspective on the board because they see that as the perspective and then they draw that thing. So I don't do that anymore. So that's an example of what I'm learning of how to break my own preconceptions as well.
Well, our students are very good in imitating. Okay. So can you name it as an ethnographic study, by the way? I'm talking about theory, strictly research perspective when you're classifying the research, different types of research actually.
Yeah. So it's not ethnographic.
It's not
So
ethnographic,
it's ethnographic in method, like taking these approaches such as semi-structured interviews and qualitative observational data comes from like a discipline of ethnographic research study, that kind of qualitative method. So in my methodology, I was referencing that sort of genealogy, but in actuality, it's not an ethnographic study itself.
But I saw a good list of coding, right?
Yes.
Okay, this is very fundamental in doing qualitative research. You just speak to people. Data is everything. Here, it's not just printed form. Data could be anything. Even my voice is a kind of a data. So what you visualize, what you observe is data. So data is embedded in theories and theories embedded in data. That is the presumption in qualitative research. That's the premise of qualitative research. So this is kind of a thematic study, very good. And but however, your case must be generalizable. Your outcomes must be generalizable.
Correct.
So to do that, what was your effort? Then only the research can be considered as conclusive. Okay?
Sure. So I think that it's a case study, right? So there are definitely limitations to scope. So I think that for us as researchers, we felt that understanding the really nuanced challenges that the school in particular was facing and how they were seeing teaching, that had value. This idea that individual stories have value and we can learn from our community and the experiences of our community, that's valuable. And then, the third objective being recommendations, that then in the future we try those recommendations, we see how they go. Are they successful? Are they not successful? And then we have more research and we have another paper we can do.
Okay. Over to the audience. Yeah.
You said that the English teaching is started at the year 6 or grade 6 or whatever? So
At Bandaranayake itself. So because the study was at Bandaranayake itself,
that school
really
only grade
assessing
6.
the teaching there. So
Grade-
from 6 to 12, yeah.
Yeah.
Grade 6, starting grade 6.
Yeah.
Starting at grade 6, but as I know, many other schools, they start English from grade 2 or 3.
Yeah,
is
so
it-
I am quite certain that the students did start at grade 2 or 3. It's just that because Bandaranayake is starting from 6,
Maybe-
that's all that I can assess.
Maybe they don't have teachers. Maybe that is the reason.
No, maybe they don't have classes.
Yeah.
They start classes from 6.
So what is your recommendation? Which grade they should start teaching, learning English?
I mean, I think the earlier the better. I do think that the students are learning earlier, but the study itself was just of this school. I think that students, if it's hard because part of what we're talking about also is resources, but even at the very beginning of when school starts, I think English language should happen. Because the earlier you start with brain development, the easier it is going to be to learn and become fluent.
Good. I suggest you, in your recommendation, include that as well.
Yeah.
So that the message will be conveyed.
Okay.
That it is essential and important to start it early as possible.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
Ciara, hi Ciara. Your topic is very interesting and timely topic. I hope you're Fulbright scholar.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's very good that you have selected a country like Sri Lanka for your studies. My question is on mainly research aspects. I have two questions actually. First one is, when you do this particular research, how did you minimize the Hawthorne effects? That means how the sample behave when they are under observation. And that is my first question. And the second question is actually, did you try asking the same question? Who actually asked that question? Is it you or the English teacher?
Which question?
No, you said you asked questions from the students.
Yeah.
Is that you or the students?
It was me.
Right. So did you check the impact of your accent on when you're asking these questions?
Yeah.
How do they behave when the same question asked by their own
Yeah.
teacher and when you ask the same question?
Yeah, I think those are really good questions. So I'll answer the second one first. Like when I asked the question, what did you do today? The other teacher was in the classroom, the one who suggested I work on grammar, and made the assessment at the end. She asked my question again. She said, what did you do today? And they couldn't understand. What I've found is really it's when they see it written, they can understand it. So I think that goes a little bit to, in some way, your first question is that I would say about 50% of the time the other teachers, when I was doing methods, they were also there, so there's sort of that cross-checking happening. I think that, there are a lot of limitations and also advantages of being a foreign English language teacher in a classroom. And I think that one of the limitations is absolutely that they are going to respond to me differently. It also means I have a different lens, but they definitely are going to respond to me differently. So I think that's sort of unavoidable if I'm involved in this study. Yeah.
So there's a Hawthorne effect, by the way. Students, the Hawthorne effect in research? I must have taught you. Hawthorne is one of your cities you're from UK, am I correct?
US.
You are, Hawthorne is in UK. Okay, today you go and type in Hawthorne effect in research, learn, okay, homework. Right. We'll go to the next presenter, Mr. Fernando. You were talking about 6R principles, right? So, and Fernando, you said there's a less emphasis given to circular concept in Sri Lanka. Yes. Is it a research outcome, by the way? That's my, or your opinion. I want to clarify this.
As per the literature, and most of the interviews also said that only 3R principles are applying in Sri Lanka. Those are also for few scale, mega scale sustainable construction projects in Sri Lanka.
Well, how many research papers you could come across during your literature review related to local context on this subject?
At about, basically I followed the recent study at, which was done at University of Moneragala that implementing circular economy and 6R principles for the pre-construction stage. That was the basic one I followed, the recent one.
Because it's a trending topic in the research domain these days. Students, the academics, they do, they're fond of doing research on this topic or the domain of circular economy. We are wishing a circular economy in one fine day, a fully fledged circular economy, so that we have no any financial difficulties. If we can get everything circular, then it's fine actually. So we reuse, okay, and continue to use the same set of materials. It's again, there's a thing called generational equity, okay, generational equity. That's one of the tenets, maxims of sustainability. It's not only sustainable construction, but sustainable economy, sustainable industries, this intergenerational equity. That is a human concept of humanity. Because today we are living in this world using the natural resources that is created by someone else. We don't know whether it's God or anyone, but we are using it. And it is our bounden duty to think of the generation yet to be born, and we have to keep or reserve some portion of resources for their use. That's a human concept. So sustainability has different dimensions, one of which is this intergenerational equity. Okay? So what we want to do is to promote this intergenerational equity. So that is my viewpoint, and I think since we are running the time faster, we'll move on to the audience for any valid questions, please.
Rather question I have suggestion to you. Now we have already done a lot of research on 6R principles, and I know Professor Lalita Silva is one of the PhD students. She did research on 3.6R, and they developed a kind of a matrix. So I think we should now move beyond these basic concepts, and we should investigate how we can expand our research beyond that level. That is just a suggestion, that question.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Madam.
Professor Yasangi. Professor Lalit sir, have you got any questions?
No, I totally agree with that concept.
Yeah.
We are doing similar research in different facets. So if we brought together, all together, we can make the national policy out of it.
That's right.
That is the level I think that she's expecting.
Yeah.
The universities must give, hints for national policies to the administrators, the government, the politicians. Then only we have completed our duty, by spending so much of time and money, our interest to come out with the research output, it should go to the benefit of the society. That is the concept.
Thank you.
Then we will be doing justice to the generation equity.
Of course, yes.
As I should write.
Yeah. Well, this is multidisciplinary research. At the beginning, I was quoting one example, the bell pepper plant growth and the measurement of that growth levels using machine learning. So there's a combination. Like, for example, the design cost optimization, the architecture students and the quantity surveying students can together do research, okay, design cost optimization. So I was expecting that kind of a hybrid approach, whatever the crossing, the disciplines crossing each other, the boundaries are crossed over, right? That is the essence of doing multidisciplinary research, actually. Because it's an accepted fact that research cannot be done in isolation by limiting your own spheres of your knowledge, right? So different professionals belonging to different disciplines must work together, and that synergistic effect will be very important, actually, to come up with something very innovative and original. So with that remark, let me conclude this session, and shall I conclude? Okay. So thank you very much, and over to the gentlemen who are coming to the final tail end award part of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the technical session on multidisciplinary studies, and it is time to award certificates to the presenters. To give away the certificates, I would like to invite the chair of the session, Professor Chandana Jayalath. KWAR, Lakmal, and STS Karunanayake. Hasanthika, Victar, and authors. Ciara Post and PDDD Wickramasinghe. WMKH Fernando and authors. Thank you, sir. Please remain on stage. I cordially invite the Rector, Southern Campus, Major General LCR Jayasuriya, RSP, NDC, PSC, accompanied by Dr. A.H. Lakmal, Dean, Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences, to award a token of appreciation to the session chair, Professor Chandana Jayalath. Thank you, sir. I request the Rector of Southern Campus, Major General LCR Jayasuriya, RSP, NDC, PSC, to remain on stage to give away the tokens of appreciation to the panel of judges. Architect, Associate Professor Dr. M.N.R. Vijayatunga. Dr. Ravihansa Chandratilaka, Planner, Dr. Upali Pereira, Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time to announce the best oral and poster presentations. I kindly request the Rector, Southern Campus, Major General LCI Jayasuriya, RSP, NDC, PSC to remain on stage to give away the awards. There are 2 overall best poster presentations, and the award goes to KUG, Sandamali, and authors. IUK Gunawardana and HT Rupasinghe. There are also 2 overall Best Paper awards, and the awards goes to KGES Dias and authors. HDS Ashoka and authors. Thank you, sir. As we have come to the end of technical sessions, I would like to invite the conference coordinator, Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences, Dr. Rizna Aruz, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to sum up the session. Rector, Southern Campus. Dean, Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences, Senior Deputy Dean, Faculty of Defense and Strategic Studies, distinguished invitees, speakers, resource persons, judges, presenters, and my dear colleagues. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to deliver the vote of thanks in this occasion. First and foremost, I would like to thank Rector, Southern Campus, and Dean, Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences for accepting the challenge of organizing the conference in Southern Campus and facilitating the session amidst a lot of difficulties and obstacles. So I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to all the chairpersons of plenary sessions and the technical sessions for accepting our invitation and coming here and contributing in making this event a huge success. And I would also like to thank the judges of technical and poster sessions, Architect, Associate Professor, Dr. M.N.R. Wijayatunga, Dr. Ravihansa Chandratilaka, and Planner, Dr. T.G.U.P. Pereira, for evaluating the research papers and presentation. Further, I wish to thank the presenters of technical and poster sessions for sharing their valuable research findings at International Research Conference 2022 of KDU Southern Campus. And also my appreciation goes to all the organizing committees for their unwavering support and dedication in making the conference a reality. And finally, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the academic, military, and non-academic staff who have been part of this event since day one and extend their fullest support till the end. So I'm not going to take your time anymore. So it remains for me to thank everybody once again for inviting me to close this excellent conference, and I hope that you have all found it fruitful event. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a good night.
Thank you, Madam. The proceedings of the technical sessions of Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences of IRC 2022 are hereby concluded. The post-conference will commence at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the national anthem.
Apa hati tu lebih